The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They sent signals into the void. They built telescopes and satellites. They dreamed of meeting other beings from distant worlds. They should have been more careful about what they wished for. The Corvus Empire ruled 3,000 star systems. Their ships were massive. Their weapons were powerful. Their armies had crushed hundreds of civilizations across the galaxy. To them, conquest was not cruelty. It was simply the natural order of things. The strong ruled. The weak served. This was the way it had always been. When their deep space probe discovered Earth, the Corvus were not impressed. They watched humanity for 6 months through hidden sensors. They saw the wars. They saw the pollution. They saw nations arguing over small pieces of land while their planet slowly grew warmer. The Corvus scientists wrote their report with bored expressions on their faces. Class D primitive civilization, the report said. Technology level, basic interplanetary. Military capability, minimal. Threat assessment, none. Recommendation, standard subjugation protocol. High Overlord Varn read the report in his throne room on the capital world. He was old, even by Corvus standards. His gray skin was covered in the ceremonial scars of 100 victories. He had conquered more worlds than he could remember. Earth would simply be another mark on his legacy. Send Ambassador Nellis, Varn commanded. Give them the standard terms. 30 cycles to surrender. If they refuse, we send the fleet. His advisors bowed low. None of them questioned the order. None of them thought it necessary. Earth was just another primitive world. It would fall like all the others. Ambassador Nellis arrived in Earth's solar system aboard a diplomatic vessel. The ship was sleek and silver, covered in symbols of the Corvus Empire. It stopped near Earth's moon and broadcast a message on all frequencies. Every television, every radio, every phone on Earth received the transmission at the same moment. Nellis appeared on billions of screens. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that blinked in sequence. His voice was translated into every human language simultaneously. People of Earth, Nellis began. I am Ambassador Nellis of the Corvus Galactic Empire. I bring you a message from High Overlord Varn, ruler of 3,000 star systems, master of the galactic core, and supreme commander of the Imperial Armada. He paused to let the weight of the title sink in. Your world has been observed and classified. You have been found to be a primitive species, but one with potential for usefulness. The Empire offers you a choice. Surrender unconditionally within 30 standard cycles. Dismantle all military forces. Submit to Imperial rule. In exchange, your species will be granted the honor of serving the Empire. You will work in our mines, our factories, our farms. Your children will learn to be productive members of Imperial society. Nellis leaned forward slightly. If you refuse, the Imperial Armada will arrive. Your cities will burn. Your nations will fall. Your people will be taken by force and made to serve regardless. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. You have 30 cycles. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. On Earth, chaos erupted. World leaders held emergency meetings. Militaries went to high alert. People filled the streets in panic. Some prayed. Some rioted. Some simply sat in silence, staring at the sky, waiting for the end dot in the headquarters of the United Nations. Politicians screamed at each other. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight, even though they knew it was hopeless. A few suggested trying to negotiate for better terms. The arguments went in circles for hours, but far above them, on an orbital station called Magungwa, a different conversation was happening. Admiral Park Taiho stood at the window of his command center, looking down at the blue and green planet below. He was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short in military style and a face that rarely showed emotion. He had served in the Navy for 40 years. He had commanded ships, led operations, and trained thousands of officers. But nothing in his official record explained why he was truly here. Behind him, Lieutenant Commander Choi Hana watched the chaos unfolding on her screens. Reports flooded in from every nation. Panic levels were rising. Military units were mobilizing without clear orders. The world was falling apart. "Admiral," Hana said, her voice tight with worry, "the Council is requesting your presence at the emergency summit. They want to discuss response options." Taiho did not turn from the window. "What options are they considering?" "Surrender, mostly. Some are talking about a symbolic resistance to save face. A few are suggesting we try to hide underground and wait them out." Hana paused. "No one believes we can actually fight." Taiho was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth lifted into a smile. It was not a nervous smile or a sad smile. It was the smile of a man who knew a secret that no one else knew. Hana had served under Taiho for 5 years. She had never seen him smile like that. "Admiral?" she asked uncertainly. Taiho finally turned from the window. His eyes were calm, almost peaceful. "Send a reply to Ambassador Nellis," he said. "Tell him we decline the Empire's generous offer." Hana stared at him. "Sir, with respect, our public military assets are nothing compared to what they have. If we refuse, they will send their armada. Millions will die. Maybe billions." "I know," Taiho said. He walked to his command chair and sat down slowly. "Send a message anyway. And add something for me." "What should I add?" Taiho's smile grew slightly wider. "Tell them we will be waiting." Hana hesitated, her fingers hovering over the console. She had questions. So many questions. But she had learned long ago that Admiral Taiho never gave orders without reason. Even when those orders seemed like madness, she typed the message and sent it. Across the solar system, on his diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Nellis received a human response. He read it twice, certain he had misunderstood. Then he read it a third time. They had refused. More than that, they had told him they would be waiting, as if they wanted the armada to come. Nellis felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Confusion, perhaps, even a small touch of unease. He sent the report back to the Empire. High Overlord Vaughn's response was immediate. "Send the fleet. Destroy them." Back on Magungho Station, Admiral Taiho sat in his chair, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, an armada was preparing to come and crush his world. The politicians below were panicking. The people were afraid. Everything seemed hopeless, but Taiho just kept smiling, because he knew something that the Corvith Empire did not know. Something that humanity had kept hidden for 50 long years. Something that would change everything. The trap was set. Now all they had to do was wait for the enemy to walk into it. 50 years ago, a ship fell from the sky that had crashed into the Pacific Ocean on a dark night in early spring. No satellites recorded it. No radar detected it. The only witnesses were a fishing boat from Korea and a cargo ship from Japan. Both crews watched in silence as a streak of fire cut across the stars and disappeared beneath the waves. Within hours, military vessels from 5 nations converged on the location. Divers went down into the black water. What they found changed everything. The ship was alien. There was no doubt about that. Its metal was nothing like anything on Earth. Its design was strange and beautiful and terrifying all at once. But the ship was broken and dying, and so were the creatures inside it. They were called the Nivari. They had light purple skin and gentle eyes, and they were the last survivors of a world that no longer existed. The Corvith Empire had found their planet 200 years ago. The Navari had refused to surrender. So the Empire burned their cities, poisoned their oceans, and took the survivors as slaves. These few had escaped. They had spent decades running, hiding, trying to find a place where the Empire could not reach them. When their ship finally broke down near Earth, they knew they were dying. But they had one last gift to give. They gave humanity the truth. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of empires and armies and wars that had been going on for thousands of years. The Corvith were one of the largest and most cruel. They conquered without mercy. They enslaved without guilt. And one day, they would find Earth. The Navari had star charts showing Corvith territory and expansion patterns. They had data on Imperial ships and weapons. They had records of tactics used against other civilizations. Most importantly, they had a warning. They will come, the dying Navari captain told the humans gathered around his bed. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not for many years. But they will come. And when they do, they will see you as weak. They will think you are easy prey. Use that. Let them underestimate you. It is the only advantage you will ever have. The captain died 3 days later. He was buried in a secret location, known only to a handful of people. His crew followed him within weeks. But their gift lived on. The nations of Earth did something they had never done before. They worked together. In secret, behind the scenes of public politics and fake conflicts, the world's leaders agreed to a hidden accord. They would prepare for the day the Empire came. And they would do it without anyone knowing. For 50 years, humanity built in silence. On the surface, Earth looked the same. Nations argued. Wars happened. People lived their normal lives. The news talked about elections and scandals and sports. Nobody knew about the bases being built inside asteroids. Nobody knew about the factories hidden beneath the ocean floor. Nobody knew about the ships being constructed in the dark spaces between planets. Dr. Kang Minho was 25 years old when he was recruited into Project Horizon. He was a physicist with a specialty in energy systems. He thought he was being hired for a government research lab. Instead, he was taken to a facility that did not exist on any map. For 30 years, Minho and thousands of other scientists worked on 3 programs that would become humanity's secret weapons. The first was called the Veil Network. It was a system of satellites and ground stations that could bend light and energy in ways that seemed like magic. When activated, the network could make Earth invisible to all known scanning technology. The planet would simply disappear from sensors. Ships looking for Earth would see only empty space. The second program created the Sunfire Lances. These were orbital weapons that could collect and focus solar energy into concentrated beams of plasma. A single lance could cut through warships like a hot knife through paper. The lances were hidden inside what looked like normal communication satellites. Nobody outside the project knew they existed. The third program was the Ghost Fleet. Over 5 decades, humanity secretly built 300 warships. These ships were designed based on everything the Navari had taught them. They were fast. They were silent. They were equipped with stealth technology that could fool even Corvith sensors. The ships were hidden throughout the solar system, disguised as asteroids and debris. They sat waiting in the darkness, ready to wake up when the time came. Now, 50 years later, the time had come. Admiral Park Tai-ho stood in a conference room deep inside Magunwa Station. Around him sat the commanders of the Ghost Fleet and the leaders of Project Horizon. On screens around the room, the faces of world leaders watched in silence. Dr. Kang Minho, now old and gray, stood at the front of the room. His hands trembled slightly as he activated the presentation. He had waited 30 years for this moment. 50 years ago, we received a warning. Minho began. "We were told that one day an enemy would come. An enemy that would see us as weak. An enemy that would expect easy victory." He pressed a button, and images of the 3 programs appeared on screen. "We used those 50 years well." He explained each program in detail. The Veil network that would hide Earth. The Sunfire lances that would strike from nowhere. The Ghost fleet that would tear the enemy apart before they even knew they were in a battle. When he finished, the room was silent. The weight of what humanity had built hung in the air like a physical thing. Admiral Taiho stood up. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. "The Corvith think we are primitive," he said. "They think we are divided, weak, and easy to conquer. They have watched us for 6 months and decided we are no threat. That is exactly what we wanted them to think." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each commander. "For 50 years, every nation on Earth has worked together in secret. We have built weapons they cannot detect. We have trained soldiers they do not know exist. We have prepared for this exact moment." Taiho walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "They are sending an armada to destroy us. 500 capital ships. Thousands of fighters. A dreadnought the size of a small moon. They expect to arrive and find a helpless world begging for mercy." He turned back to face the room. That same calm smile appeared on his face. "Instead, they will find us. And we will show them what humanity is truly capable of." Captain Li Yuna, commander of the stealth destroyer Silent Fang, leaned forward in her chair. She was young for a captain, only 38, but she had trained for this her entire adult life. She had never commanded her ship in real combat. None of them had. The Ghost fleet had existed in silence, waiting. Now the waiting was over. "When do we begin?" she asked. Te, who looked at her with something like pride. "The moment their armada enters our solar system. The moment they think victory is certain." His smile widened just slightly. "We let them get close. We let them feel confident. And then we show them the truth." He turned to address everyone in the room and everyone watching on screens across the planet. "We did not prepare for 50 years just to survive. We prepared to win. Today, humanity stops hiding. Today, we fight." The room erupted in cheers. Commanders saluted. World leaders nodded with fierce determination. Far away, the Corvith Armada was already on its way, flying toward what they thought would be an easy conquest. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Fleet Commander Torak stood on the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Crusher of Worlds. Through the massive viewing window, he could see his armada stretching out behind him like a wall of metal and fire. 500 capital ships, 2,000 fighters, supply vessels, troop transports, and weapons platforms. It was the largest fleet he had ever commanded. Torak was proud. He had served the Empire for over a century. He had crushed rebellions and conquered planets and broken the will of species that thought they could resist. Earth would be no different. It would be one more victory in a long career of victories. His second officer approached with a datapad. "Commander, we will enter the target system in 6 hours. All ships report ready for combat." "Combat?" Torak laughed, a harsh sound like grinding rocks. "There will be no combat. We will arrive. We will demonstrate our power. And they will kneel. The humans are primitives. They have nothing that can hurt us." The officer nodded and walked away. Torak turned back to the window and watched the stars blur past as his fleet traveled through the space between worlds. 6 hours later, they arrived. The Corvith Armada emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Sensors immediately began scanning for the target planet. Ships took formation. Weapon systems powered up. Everything was going according to plan. Then something strange happened. "Commander," a sensor officer called out. confusion in his voice. I cannot locate the target planet. Torek turned sharply. What do you mean? Earth, sir. It should be there. The officer pointed at his screen. But sensors show nothing. Empty space. Torek pushed the officer aside and looked at the screen himself. The data was clear. According to every sensor on every ship in the fleet, there was no planet where Earth should be. Just empty void. Impossible, Torek growled. A planet cannot simply disappear. Check the coordinates. I have checked 3 times, sir. The coordinates are correct. The planet is not there. Torek felt a small flicker of unease in his chest. He pushed it down. There had to be an explanation. Perhaps the humans had some kind of primitive cloaking technology. It would not matter. Cloaking could hide things from sensors, but it could not stop weapons. All ships, advance toward the last known coordinates, Torek commanded. Spread formation. Prepare for possible resistance. The Armada moved forward slowly, hundreds of ships pushing deeper into the silent solar system. Torek watched from his command chair, waiting for the moment when Earth would appear on his screens. It never did. Instead, something else appeared. A flash of light erupted behind the Armada. Then another. Then a dozen more. Torek spun around to look at the rear view screens and felt his blood turn cold. Ships were dying. Bright beams of golden fire were cutting through his capital ships like they were made of paper. The beams came from nowhere, from empty space, from positions where no enemy ships could be seen. Torek watched as the carrier Wind of Conquest exploded in a ball of flame. Next to it, the battleship Iron Dominance was cut in half, its 2 pieces spinning away into the void. What is happening? Torek shouted. Where is that fire coming from? Unknown, Commander. The weapons officer yelled back. We cannot detect any enemy vessels. Our sensors show only empty space. Then our sensors are wrong. Find them. But they could not find them. The human ships were invisible to Corvith technology. They appeared for just a moment to fire, then vanished again before anyone could target them. The golden beams of the Sunfire lances continued to tear through the Armada with terrible precision. Captain Lee Yuna sat in the command chair of the Silent Fang, watching the battle unfold on her tactical display. Her ship was one of 50 stealth destroyers leading the first wave of attack. They moved through the Corvith formation like ghosts, striking and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Target the weapons platforms next, Yuna ordered. Take away their ability to fight back. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this for years. Every drill, every simulation, every sleepless night of preparation had led to this moment. And it was working. The Sunfire lances continued their deadly work from positions hidden throughout the solar system. The orbital weapons fired beams of focused solar energy that traveled at the speed of light. By the time the Corvith saw the beam, they were already dead. In the first 90 seconds of battle, 12 Corvith capital ships were destroyed. In the next 5 minutes, the number rose to 30. The Armada that had seemed so powerful and unstoppable was being torn apart by an enemy they could not see. On the Crusher of Worlds, Torek watched the disaster unfold with growing horror. This was not possible. This could not be happening. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak. They were not supposed to have weapons that could destroy capital ships with single shots. Return fire, Torek screamed. Fire at the source of those beams. We cannot block targets, Commander, the weapons officer replied, his voice shaking. Our systems cannot track enemy positions. Then fire blind. Fill the space with weapons fire. The Corvith ships began shooting at empty space, hoping to hit something. Their weapons fire lit up the void in brilliant flashes of energy. But it was useless. The human ships were not where the Corvith were shooting. They were already somewhere else, repositioning for another attack. The Ghost Fleet emerged from hiding points all across the solar system. 300 warships, appearing out of what had looked like asteroids and debris fields, joined the battle. They swarmed around the Corvus formation like wolves around injured prey. Admiral Park Taiho watched the battle from his command center on Muggawa Station. His face was calm, almost peaceful. Everything was going according to plan. Commander Torak is attempting to retreat, Lieutenant Commander Hana reported. His fleet is pulling back toward the edge of the system. Do not let them, Taiho said quietly. Close the trap. The Ghost Fleet moved to cut off the Corvus escape routes. Human ships appeared in front of the fleeing armada, forcing them to change course. More ships appeared behind them, pushing them back. The Corvus were being herded like animals. On the Crusher of Worlds, Torak finally understood what was happening. This was not a battle. This was a hunt. And his mighty armada was the prey. How? He whispered, staring at the screens showing his dying fleet. How is this possible? They were supposed to be primitive. His second officer stood beside him, face pale with shock. Commander, what do we do? Torak was silent for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew looked to him for orders, for guidance, for some sign that their commander knew how to save them. But Torak had no answers. Everything he knew about war, everything he had learned in a century of conquest, was useless here. They were never primitive, Torak said finally. We were wrong. About everything. We walked into a trap, and now we are dying for our arrogance. The battle continued for 3 more hours. By the end, a third of the Corvus armada was destroyed. Another third was heavily damaged. The survivors huddled together in a defensive formation, too afraid to run, too broken to fight. The humans had not lost a single ship. Admiral Taiho allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. The first phase was complete. The enemy was hurt and confused and terrified. But the battle was not over yet. He pressed a button on his command console and opened a channel to the Ghost Fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Taiho. Phase 1 is complete. But we are not done. The Empire will not accept defeat easily. They will try to recover. They will try to send word home for reinforcements. We cannot allow that. He paused, looking at the stars through his window. It is time for Phase 2. We do not just defend anymore. Now, we hunt. Across the fleet, human crews cheered and prepared for the next stage of battle. They had proven that Earth could fight. Now, they would prove that Earth could win. And somewhere in the cold void of space, Commander Torak sat in his damaged ship, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet, and felt something he had never felt before in his long career: fear. The Corvus armada was running. Commander Torak could barely believe it. His fleet, the pride of the Empire, was fleeing from a species they had called primitive just days ago. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds were now limping through space. Their hulls torn open, their crews dead or dying, their weapons useless against an enemy they could not see. Torak sat in his command chair on the Crusher of Worlds, watching the nightmare unfold on his screens. His second officer stood beside him, silent and pale. Neither of them had words for what was happening. Commander, the communications officer spoke up, his voice trembling. I have been trying to send a distress signal to the Empire, but something is blocking our transmissions. Nothing is getting through. Torak closed his eyes. Of course, the humans had thought of everything. They were not just defeating his fleet. They were isolating it. No message would reach the Empire. No reinforcements would come. They were alone. Keep trying, Torak said, though he knew it was hopeless. Far behind the retreating armada, Admiral Park Taiho transferred his command from Muggawa Station to the flagship Baekdu. The ship was one of the largest in the Ghost Fleet, designed to serve as a mobile command center. From its bridge, Taiho could direct the entire human fleet while staying close to the action. "Status report," Taiho said as he settled into the command chair. Lieutenant Commander Hana pulled up the tactical display. "The enemy is retreating toward the outer system. Approximately 300 Corvus ships remain operational. They are trying to maintain formation, but their coordination is breaking down. Many ships have sustained heavy damage." "And their communications?" Hana smiled slightly. "Completely blocked. Our electronic warfare teams, led by Specialist Shin Junji, have jammed all outgoing signals. They cannot call for help." Taiho nodded with satisfaction. Shin Junji was only 26 years old, but she was perhaps the most talented hacker humanity had ever produced. Her team had spent years studying Corvus communication systems, preparing for exactly this moment. "Good," Taiho said. "Order the fleet to pursue. Do not let them rest. Do not let them regroup. We will hunt them until they have nothing left." The ghost fleet spread out across the solar system, chasing the broken armada. Human ships appeared from every direction, cutting off escape routes, destroying stragglers, never giving the Corvus a moment of peace. The hunters had become the hunted. Captain Lee Yuna pushed her destroyer Silent Fang to the front of the pursuit. Her ship had already destroyed 6 enemy vessels in the first battle. She intended to add more to that count. "There," she said, pointing at her screen. "A damaged carrier. It is falling behind the main group." Her weapons officer nodded. "I have a lock. Fire." The Silent Fang's main gun spoke, and the Corvus carrier died in a flash of light. Yuna did not celebrate. She simply looked for the next target. The chase continued for 2 days. The human fleet followed the Corvus through the outer reaches of the solar system, past the orbit of Neptune, into the cold darkness beyond. Every few hours, another Corvus ship would fall behind, and human vessels would descend upon it like wolves. Torak watched his fleet shrink hour by hour. He had started with 500 capital ships. Now he had less than 200, and many of those were barely functional. The dreadnought itself had taken several hits. Its shields were failing. Its weapon systems were damaged. Even the mighty Crusher of Worlds was dying. "Commander," his second officer said quietly, "we must consider surrender." Torak turned to look at him with empty eyes. "The Empire does not surrender. The Empire is not here, sir. We are. And if we continue like this, none of us will survive to tell them what happened." Torak was silent. The officer was right. He knew the officer was right. But surrender was something Torak had never done in his entire life. He had always been the one accepting surrender from others. The thought of kneeling before these humans, these creatures the Empire had dismissed as insects, was almost worse than death. But death was coming regardless. At least if he surrendered, some of his crew might survive. Some might eventually return to the Empire and warn them about what Earth truly was. Before Torak could make a decision, alarms began blaring across the bridge. Multiple contacts. The sensor officer shouted, "Human ships are surrounding us. They are boarding ships. Commander, they are coming for the dreadnought." Captain Yuna led the boarding team personally. Her Marines wore heavy combat armor and carried weapons designed for close-quarters fighting. They cut through the dreadnought's hull with plasma torches and poured into the ship. Through a dozen entry points, the Corvus soldiers tried to resist. They were bigger than humans, stronger, covered in natural armor. They had won countless battles against other species through sheer physical power, but they had never fought humans before. The Corvus knew how to conquer. The humans knew how to survive. There was a difference. The Corvus fought because it was their role. The humans fought like every battle was their last. They moved through the corridors of the dreadnought with terrifying speed and violence. They did not hesitate. They did not show mercy. They had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, and they intended to make every second count. Marine Sergeant O.G. Wan led a squad down the main corridor toward the bridge. A group of Corvette soldiers blocked their path, weapons raised. "Surrender," Ji-Wan called out. "Drop your weapons and you will not be harmed." The Corvette commander laughed. "Little creatures, you think you can defeat us? We are warriors of the Empire." Ji-Wan did not respond with words. He simply raised his rifle and fired. The battle lasted 11 seconds. When it was over, every Corvette soldier in the corridor was down, and Ji-Wan's squad had not lost a single member. "Push forward," Ji-Wan ordered. "The bridge is ahead." On the bridge, Torak heard the sounds of battle growing closer. His guards positioned themselves around the doors, ready to make a final stand. But Torak knew it was pointless. The humans were too fast, too deadly, too well prepared that the doors exploded inward. Human Marines poured through, their weapons blazing. Torak's guards fell one by one, their shots missing targets that moved too quickly to track. Within minutes, it was over. Captain Yuna walked onto the bridge, her rifle still raised. She surveyed the room with cold eyes, then focused on the tall, scarred alien sitting in the command chair. "Commander Torak," she said, "by order of the United Earth Defense Command, you are now a prisoner of war. Your fleet is defeated. Your communications are blocked. You have no rescue coming." Torak stared at her. This small human woman, barely half his size, had just captured the commander of the largest armada the Empire had sent against a single world in centuries. The universe had turned upside down. "How?" Torak asked. "How did you do this? We watched you for months. You had nothing. You were primitives." Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You saw what we wanted you to see. We have been preparing for you for 50 years. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was trained for this exact moment. You thought you were hunting prey. You were walking into a trap." She turned and nodded to her Marines. "Take him. Admiral Taiho will want to speak with him." As they dragged him away, Torak looked back at his ruined bridge, at his fallen guards, at everything he had lost. And he finally understood the truth that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The humans had never been prey. They had been predators, waiting patiently for their moment to strike. And now that the moment had come, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. High Overlord Varn sat on his throne and waited for news of victory. The throne room was vast and cold, filled with stone pillars carved with the names of conquered worlds. Varn had spent his entire life adding names to those pillars. Earth would be the next. A small, primitive world, barely worth remembering. But a conquest was a conquest, and Varn collected them like other beings collected precious stones. His advisors stood in a line before him, their heads bowed in submission. None of them spoke. They had learned long ago that Varn did not appreciate being disturbed with unimportant matters. Then the doors opened, and a communications officer rushed in. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. Varn had never seen one of his officers look so afraid. "High Overlord," the officer stammered. "We have received a transmission from the human world." "From Earth." Varn leaned forward slightly. "A surrender?" "No, High Overlord. It is something else. You must see it." The officer activated the main display screen at the far end of the throne room. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then an image appeared. It was a human. An older male with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a military uniform covered in symbols Varn did not recognize. Behind him, through a window, Varn could see stars and the shapes of many ships. "My name is Admiral Park Taiho," the human said. "Supreme Commander of Earth's United Defense, Fleet, I am sending this message to High Overlord Varn and to everyone in the Corvith Empire. Varn's eyes narrowed. This was strange. Why would a primitive send a message directly to him? On the screen, Taiho continued speaking. 30 cycles ago, your empire sent us an ultimatum. You told us to surrender or be destroyed. You called us primitive. You called us weak. You sent your armada to crush us. The image changed. It now showed the wreckage of Corvith ships floating in space. Hundreds of destroyed vessels, their hulls broken, their weapons silent. Bodies drifted among the debris. It was a graveyard. This is what remains of your armada, Taiho's voice said over the images. 500 capital ships. 2,000 fighters. All of them gone. We destroyed them in 3 days. The image changed again. This time, it showed Commander Torak sitting in a bare metal room, his hands bound. The once proud fleet commander looked broken, his eyes empty, his spirit crushed. Your fleet commander is our prisoner now. He can tell you what happened, if you let him live long enough to speak. But I think you can see the truth for yourself. The image returned to Taiho. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. But his eyes held something dangerous. I have a message for you. I Overlord Varn, and I want you to listen very carefully. Varn leaned forward, his claws digging into the arms of his throne. Earth is not a colony, Taiho said. Earth is not a resource. Earth is not a target. Earth is a line in the stars that your empire will never cross. We have weapons you cannot detect. We have ships you cannot see. We have soldiers who do not know how to surrender. The image shifted one more time. It showed coordinates, numbers that any Corvith navigator would recognize immediately. These are the coordinates of your homeworld, Taiho said. We know where you live. We know how to find you. And if you ever send another fleet to our solar system, we will not stop at defense. Taiho's calm expression did not change, but his voice grew harder. We will come for you. We will find your capital. We will burn your palaces and free your slaves and tear down everything you have built over thousands of years. We did not spend 50 years preparing just to protect ourselves. We prepared to fight. And if you give us a reason, we will bring that fight to your door. The screen went dark dot in the throne room. No one moved. No one spoke. Varn sat frozen on his throne, staring at the empty display. For the first time in his very long life, he felt something cold creeping through his body. Fear, not fear of death. Varn had faced death many times. This was something different. This was the fear of everything he had built crumbling to dust. This was the fear of facing an enemy he could not defeat. His advisors looked at each other nervously. One of them finally spoke. I, Overlord, surely this is a bluff. The humans cannot have the power to threaten our homeworld. They are just one planet. We have thousands. Varn did not answer. He was thinking about the images he had seen. The destroyed armada. The captured commander. The calm confidence in the human admiral's eyes. Prepare another fleet, Varn said finally. But his voice lacked its usual strength. Do not send it yet. We must study these humans more carefully. We must understand how they did this. The advisors bowed and hurried away, grateful to escape the throne room. Varn remained alone, staring at the empty screen. Somewhere across the stars, a primitive species had just rewritten the rules of the galaxy. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. People filled the streets, cheering and crying and holding each other. They had faced extinction and survived. More than survived. They had won. But in the command center of Magungwa Station, Admiral Taiho was not celebrating. He sat in his chair, reading messages that had been flooding in from across the galaxy since Earth's victory became known. They came from species Taiho had never heard of. species that had been conquered by the Corvus long ago, species that lived in slavery, their world stripped of resources, their people treated as property. They had heard about Earth's victory through hidden networks that even the Empire did not know about, and they were asking a question: will you help us? Lieutenant Commander Hannah brought him another stack of messages. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she was smiling. More requests, she said. From the Navari survivors in the outer sectors. From the Kelith mining colonies. From a dozen other species I have never heard of. They all want to know the same thing. Taiho read through the messages in silence. Each one told the same story. Oppression, suffering, hope. Admiral, Hana said softly, what do we do? Taiho set down the messages and looked out the window at the stars. He thought about the Navari who had crashed on Earth 50 years ago. They had given humanity their warning, their knowledge, their last hope. They had died believing that someone someday would fight back against the Empire. Maybe that someone was humanity. We did not prepare for 50 years just to protect ourselves, Taiho said, echoing his own words. We prepared to change things. He stood up and walked to the window. Beyond the glass, he could see the ghost fleet forming up. Hundreds of ships that had hidden in silence for decades, now ready to sail beyond Earth's borders for the first time. Contact the Council, Taiho said. Tell them we need to talk about the future. Not just Earth's future, the galaxy's future. Hannah nodded. And what should I tell the species who are asking for help? Taiho was quiet for a long moment. Then that familiar smile appeared on his face. Tell them to hold on. Tell them to stay strong. Tell them that Earth knows what it feels like to be afraid of the dark. And tell them that help is coming. He turned back to face the stars. The Corvith have ruled this galaxy through fear for too long. They have crushed the civilizations and enslaved billions and believed that no one would ever stand against them. They were wrong. The first ships of the Ghost Fleet began to move, their engines lighting up like new stars being born. Humanity was done hiding. And now, humanity will show the galaxy what happens when the hunted become the hunters. Across the solar system, 300 ships formed into battle groups. Crews who had trained in secret for their entire lives, prepared for journeys beyond anything they had imagined. Scientists began working on new technologies. Diplomats opened channels to oppressed species throughout Corvith territory. On the Corvith homeworld, High Overlord Varn felt the first cracks appearing in his empire. Reports came in of slave uprisings, of conquered species suddenly finding new courage, of whispers spreading that the Empire could be beaten, all because one small blue planet had refused to kneel. Admiral Park Taiho watched the fleet prepare to depart. Beside him, Hana handed him a cup of tea. Are you sure about this? She asked. We barely survived one battle. Now we are talking about challenging an entire empire. Taiho took the tea and sipped it slowly. 50 years ago, a dying alien told us that someday we would have to choose. We could hide and hope the Empire never found us. Or we could prepare to fight. Not just for ourselves. For everyone who has ever been crushed under the Empire's boot. He looked at Hana with eyes that had seen too much but still held hope. We made our choice a long time ago. Now we just have to follow through. The first ships of the Ghost Fleet crossed the boundary of Earth's solar system, sailing into the unknown. Behind them, more ships followed. And behind those, the resources of an entire planet prepared to support them. Humanity had spent 50 years learning to fight. Now they would spend the next 50 years learning to liberate. The galaxy would never be the same.